My name is Delilah. I'm 15 years old and a teenage mom to my brother's child. I know, I was shocked and surprised too. You may be wondering, how did that happen? How did I get pregnant by my brother? I will explain to you how this happened, I promise. Let's start from the beginning, shall we? I met a boy on Tinder named Derek. He was so handsome and funny. How could I say no to him? We went on a few dates and he always treated me like a princess. He opened the doors for me, bought me dinner, and brought me flowers. I felt so loved by him. So one day, he asked me on a date, and I said yes. The date was lovely, and he was a complete gentleman. After the date, he brought me home and we made love. You may be wondering how I got to do this without getting in trouble. You see, I lived alone. My dad died when I was a baby, and my mother died 2 years ago, leaving me all alone. Instead of living with someone else, I ended up having to survive on my own. I had nobody else and lived all by myself. It wasn't so bad anymore, but sometimes I still got lonely. Anyways, 2 months later, I found out that I was pregnant. I told Derek about my pregnancy. I was so scared when I told him. I thought he was going to abandon me and run away from our baby, but instead, he supported me and took care of our child. I was so surprised by that, but I was glad that I didn't have to do this all by myself. He helped me whenever I was in pain or when I had cravings. He never left my side. I knew he was going to make a great father, but I didn't know much about him and his family, so I decided that I had to find out. One day, when Derek and I were having dinner, I asked him about his family. I told him all about mine and never heard anything from his. I was curious to know what type of family our baby was going to be in, who the baby's grandparents were, and if it was going to have any aunts or uncles. I wanted to know everything. My father left me when I was a baby, he said, bitterly. His smile turned into a frown as he explained to me. I hate him. He disgusts me, and I never want to be like him. I live with my mom. She's the person I love with all my heart. I nodded and listened to everything he told me. I learned to hate his father too. How could a father abandon their child? I was lucky that Derek was acting like a real man and taking care of me and his baby. It made me sad that he had to go through such a horrible time, but I was glad that he wasn't acting like that with me. I was right though. He was going to make an excellent father, even though his dad was an awful one. A few months passed and I gave birth to a baby girl. We named her Daisy, since she was so little and beautiful. Derek spent the whole time with me at the hospital and drove me back home too. As we got home, I looked down at our baby girl and said, "She looks like me when I was a baby." "Really?" Derek asked. "Can I see a picture of you when you were a baby?" "Sure," I said, as I gave him a picture of me. In the photograph, my father was holding me in his arms, smiling at me as I giggled. When he looked at the picture, Derek's smile vanished. He looked angry and sad at the same time. His hands were shaking as he looked at the picture. I was so surprised by the sudden change. Did I do something wrong? I asked him, "What happened? Is everything okay?" All he said was that he had to go back home. He got up and left. He wouldn't even look at me, or say goodbye, or kiss me like he usually did. What did I do? I thought that everything was my fault. It hurt to see him go without a word, but I couldn't cry. I had to take care of my baby. Daisy needed me. After a few days, I began to become worried. Derek still didn't come back, and he never came by to see his daughter. How could he do that to her? So I called and called him, but he never answered. He didn't even bother to call me back. I was so angry and sad that he was ditching Daisy and me. He was being a horrible father to her. I thought he was going to be good to her, but it seems that I was wrong. Still, I couldn't let this happen to my baby. She deserved better than this. I knew that I had to do something else. So I went to his home and met his mother. She told me, "He's been coming back home drunk every day. I don't know what's going on." His mother let me stay there, waiting for him. It had been hours before he finally got to his home. When he got there, he stank of alcohol and was clearly drunk. He staggered into his house and looked as if he was going to throw up when he saw me. He glared at me and asked, "Why are you here?" "I wanted to talk to you," I said. "You need to see Daisy. She needs her father." "Get out," he said, pointing at the door. "Get out of here." It broke my heart when he did that. Out of everyone in my life, I wasn't expecting him to do that to me. Especially not him. I left, crying as I went home. It felt horrible being alone and having to raise my daughter all by myself. But I knew that she needed me to be strong for her. I was determined to raise her, even if that meant that Derek wasn't going to be in her life. I had to do this for her. So, I carried on and raised our daughter. I have to admit that it was a lot harder to take care of her by myself, but I did just fine if I do say so myself. Then, something surprising happened. After 2 weeks, Derek came to my house, tears in his eyes. He stood out on the doorstep and said, "I'm so sorry." "Why did you do that?" I asked him, my arms crossed over my chest. I forgave him, but if I were being honest, I was so hurt that he left Daisy and me out of the blue and didn't explain why he was doing that. He had a responsibility to his daughter, so why? I thought he was different than his father, so how could he do such a thing? All I wanted was an explanation, and I would be okay. So when he explained to me what happened, I understood everything. "I'm your brother," he said. I gasped as he said that. It was hard for me to believe such a thing. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "How could that be? We have different families," and he knew that. "Are you joking?" "I wish I was, Delilah," he said as he began to cry. "We have the same father." I felt as if the world was spinning too fast when he told me everything, that his father left his family for my mother and he had me. In reality, Derek and I shared the same father and that we were family. I wanted to throw up from how surprised I was. This couldn't be happening. How could it? Why is this happening to me? "I still love you," I said, "but we can't be together." Derek told me he understood, but he still wanted to help take care of Daisy. He was confused about everything, but she was still his daughter and he wanted to be in her life. I knew that I had to let him be her father, but he and I couldn't be together anymore. How could we be together? We were family. My whole world was falling apart and I didn't know what to do. I still don't know what to do. Since I found out that Derek and I were related, I have felt so lost and confused. I still have Daisy to think about too. It's all too much. Since all of this happened, Derek and I have switched back and forth between each other as we took care of Daisy. This was a big secret that he and I had kept. But I didn't know if what I'm doing is correct or right.